Hey everybody, welcome to the In All Things podcast. It's time to see God in everything. Hello everybody, and welcome to another episode of the In All Things podcast. My name is Mitch Frost.
And I'm Steve Markle.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
This is weird. I don't know if we've ever really recorded on a Thursday.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
But you know what? First time for everything. And it's been, I guess the last week has been quite the interesting week for us on staff with some challenges that we don't normally face. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Yeah, you're jumping right into it.
You brought up Thursday. So it's good to have Jared back with us. Jared, our producer, has been out sick the last 2 days. I was out sick Monday and Sunday. So here we are.
Yep. So it's been a fun last week.
It's been a fun last week, yeah.
Yeah. So for those of you who listening or watching who weren't at church on Sunday, why don't you just fill us in on what happened, Steve?
I'll tell you I'll say my part. And basically, Saturday night started feeling nauseous, and without giving gross details, got sick that night.
Puked all night. Yeah,
started around 10:30 that night. It was bad. And Sherry was like, don't panic about church, And I was like, when you throw up, a lot of times you feel better afterwards. I'm like, okay. So finally it happened. And then I was like, around midnight, I'm laying there like, I feel worse. I don't feel good. And I got to preach in the morning. So I'm thinking, what do I do? And I thought, well, I'm not going to text you at midnight. And you probably wouldn't have gotten anyway. You've been asleep. So anyway, long story short is in the morning, around 6:30, I texted you and Jared and said, all right, here's the deal. Mm-hmm. I have been up vomiting. There's no way for me to preach. So you're going to preach. Jared, you're going to have to figure out announcements and all of that, but I am not going to be there. And I told you when we talked about it, when I came in on Tuesday, I said, my first wording of the email or the text was, can you? And I thought, there's no can you. You are, because there is no option, and you're going to do this. So anyway, that was my side. And then, another round of that grossness on Sunday afternoon, and then Monday resting to recover and trying to start eating again. And then back on Tuesday, feeling 80 to 90% back, still, trying to deal with the way the stomach just doesn't feel right yet. But that was what mine was. Now Jared's was not that. His was all like sinus headache and fever, different than mine, but a lot of stuff going on. Yep. And it was like a week ago that you were sick for
sinus
a
infection.
Long, at least a week, right?
It was 2 weeks.
2 weeks. That's what I was thinking. But it was like, I said to you and you guys both, in 30 years of pastoring, I've never canceled at the last minute like that. Like one other time, like 7 or 8 years ago, I had like a bad cough and like a bronchitis type of thing. And I knew on Wednesday, like I probably can't preach Sunday. So I went ahead and told somebody else they need to do it. But never have I done that in the last minute like that. And we've even on this podcast before, I would say, boasted and bragged on God, how he always gives us adrenaline. I've preached with sinus infections, with fevers, times I probably shouldn't have. But there was just no way to go up there because it would have been ugly if something happened. So how was it from your side?
From my side, it was interesting. It's funny because like the week before, it wasn't until this isn't as big, obviously, but it wasn't until Wednesday or Thursday the week before that I found out I was doing announcements. So the week before, we thought somebody else was doing announcements, and we found out, oh wait, she's not even going to be in America.
She's out of town, right?
And then it was like, okay, so Mitch is doing announcements. All right, cool. So we kind of figured that out during, I think it was run through, which is usually Thursdays. So I was like, okay, I'll announcements, no big deal. That's whatever. And so that, but that changes my Sunday morning a little bit because of diversion, which is our 5th and 6th grade on Sunday morning. So I was like, okay, I got to rethink that a little bit. I won't be in there for a little bit. I got to go do announcements. So I was thinking that, but that's it. And then obviously, and then the weekend was pretty full for us. So lots of different family parties and just different friends we were with. And so it was a very busy, full weekend. So we kind of blinked, and it was Saturday night, which is why I was in bed by the time you would have texted me if it was midnight. I was asleep. I was like, man, long weekend, going to go to bed, going to rest up, and tomorrow's going to be an easy Sunday. So that was kind of where I was. And then waking up to that text, I was like, all right. I mean, like you said, it's not like it's like do you think this would work? No, it's like, okay, like I didn't have an option. So adrenaline kind of kicked in when I woke up at 7, had 2.5 hours before service. And so I kind of took some things we've been working on with with youth and added a beginning and end. That's kind of what I told you, to make it kind of fit our series a little bit better. And then I just went for it, and it was very, very unique. I didn't get a chance to run through the full thing at all. I by the time I had written it and sent notes to Jared to put on the screens, I had to get ready and leave and eat something and leave and get here. Got here and sound checked my microphone, went into my office and had 20 minutes, and I tried to practice as much as I could, and then just had to come out and go for it and do it twice. And then went home and crashed and got up and went to the well and preached there too. So it was a full day.
I was talking to somebody last night who said, if you wouldn't have given the introduction where you told everybody what happened, they wouldn't even have known that you weren't prepared to do that. So that's a compliment to you. Shout out to Jared too for just handling things. And I mean, so many last minute changes, doing all the announcements at the end. It was a good move. And I watched it laying there in bed on YouTube. And of course, it was a slow to get the simulcast started, or whatever we call it, live broadcast. So I was like panicking that I wasn't going to get to watch it, and I, just sitting around. I didn't know. I discovered something. There are NFL games on Sunday morning. They play in England. There are some of you that know this because you skip church. But laying there in bed, I was like, well, at the 9:30 service, I'm watching Tom Brady. I was in Germany actually playing football. So I did not like that at all. But
did you puke while you were watching church Sunday morning?
No, sir.
No, okay. So it was almost past by then.
No, I had another episode at 4 that afternoon.
Oh, okay.
So I had Saturday night, 10:30, Sunday at 4. I thought it was getting better. I was nibbling on some toasts, and I thought, oh, okay. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, no, this is happening again.
Fun times.
Yeah, so it's the worst.
Well, anyway, so it's been.
So let's not talk about that anymore.
It's been a fun couple days, last couple of weeks for us here. Jared's feeling better. He's here today. So we were supposed to record on Monday. You were out. We're supposed to record on Tuesday. Jared was out. Supposed to record Wednesday. Jared was out. Now it's Thursday. We're here. We're gonna get this episode out at some point. But yeah, this is the last episode of the year for us.
Of the year. That's right.
And so we had 2 seasons this year. So how do you feel about how this podcast has been this year, and anything you can think of off the top of your head of just kind of like how you felt about this podcast so far this year?
I think we've grown. We're maturing in it a little bit, figuring some things out, talking maybe more about things that I think relate directly to what people are asking. I think we've tried to focus more on that, not just random topics, but things that are happening in the world, but also a lot of, I think we've done more maybe off of our sermon series than we had in the past. What do you think?
Yeah, it feels, I don't know, I feel like it's a little bit more fine-tuned to where there's less fluff and trying to figure out which direction we even want to go. And it is more like, okay, we know people are asking about this, so we're going to talk about this. And so I feel like we've just gotten a little bit smoother.
Less of the randomness, maybe. Like I was going to ask you randomly this morning, like, what's your favorite thing about Thanksgiving meal? Like, what's your favorite food?
Oh man, I don't know. I like it all, and you got to like mix it all together, in my opinion. So it's like I don't really have a favorite.
Not one thing stands out. I don't think so. I know, because I think about. I don't know. I think you don't like sweet potatoes, but I love the sweet potato casserole that we make, and it's so good with the turkey and the ham. Do you like turkey or ham?
I like both. This time of year, I would say turkey.
Yeah,
but typically I would say ham.
I know, because we'll have both.
Yeah,
and I love that, and all the mashed potatoes, gravy, all of it. I mean, I know. Yep. Desserts.
It's so hard. Yep.
Do you like pumpkin pie?
I do. I didn't for a long time. In the last couple of years, I like pumpkin pie now.
Now, Cool Whip or whipped cream?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Do you know the canned whipped cream or Cool Whip?
Oh, Cool Whip for sure.
All right. We had a big family debate going on about that last night. Cool Whip is better.
Yeah.
So anyway,
but
there
anyway,
you go.
That's hard because
it's
I'm a big Thanksgiving fan.
I love
like it's the whole meal for me. It's not one piece of it. It's not this item separately. No, it's all of it together on a plate. That's
entered the world, and you've entered the world of being married with 2 meals. So does that bother you having to eat it twice?
It doesn't. Not that it bothers me, but it's hard to enjoy both. It really is, because we'll eat one obviously at 12 or 1. And you stuff yourself because it's the best food of the year. You waited all year for this meal, so you stuff yourself. And then we have dinner at 4 or 5, and it's like I'm not really hungry, but I know I'm going to eat a lot then too. So I don't know.
Yeah, I don't miss that. I remember those days of driving back and forth between 2 homes. to do it. And I'm like, man, I like just having it once.
Yeah.
And then having leftovers
Yeah.
the next day.
Yeah, that's nice too.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
anyway.
But anyway,
So,
last year with this, that was our first season of this show, and we went a little bit too close to Thanksgiving. We kind of took the season too long into November, and what we noticed is people kind of drop off when the holidays start. Season
It's
starts
just
to
busy,
pick up.
yeah.
And so that's why we're kind of ending. What is today? The 18th?
Yes.
17th?
Yeah. And then we'll be back in January.
Yeah. And so we're just
Yeah.
ending a little bit earlier in November. But yeah, in terms of the podcast itself, I feel like we've just gotten to a place where it's kind of smoother operating in our conversations. We know there's at least a couple people in our church that are asking the questions that we're addressing. And I feel like that's just been kind of our way to roll.
I have found too that I lead 2 small groups, one with couples mostly in our home, and then I have a men's group here on Thursday morning early. So it was today. But so many things that we talk about, and those things have been things that we've talked about here. And I'm referencing, oh, we talked about that. So, and I think that's good. It's like there's a lot of carryover. So anyway,
absolutely.
Yeah.
So we're not going to have a super long, in-depth conversation today.
Sometimes we
say that, and then we go long anyway. But as we kind of wrap up this season and this year on the podcast, I kind of wanted to take a little bit of time. This one might feel a little bit more like an interview of you, which is different from how we usually do this. But I did want to spend some time talking about Sycamore Creek as a whole and talking about maybe where we've been and kind of where we're going. And so, yeah, I just have some questions to ask you. Don't be nervous. I can see that you're stressing over there. And then we'll kind of call it a year on In All Things. This is season 3.
Hey, it's one of my favorite topics to talk about. So
is our church?
Oh, yeah.
There you go.
That's why I was miserable Sunday morning not being here.
So let's just start with this. What year is this for you at Sycamore Creek?
Okay. I've completed 11, so I guess I'm in my 12th year.
And give us like the 30,000-foot view really quick of where you came leading up to here, or where you were before here.
Where I was before I came here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was in Virginia, a church that we had planted and been there for over 9.5 years in Northern Virginia, right outside of D.C. And, it's funny, this morning we were studying James 4 and the second part of it in our men's group where he talks about you can make all the plans you want, but if the Lord wills, then they'll come to pass. And we make plans in our lives, and we never know how we might need to pivot to something else. And that word pivot just keeps jumping out at me, because life is a lot about that, making plans but pivoting because God says, hey, do this. So in 2011 is when we moved here, and it was hard to leave a place where we had started a church, and also I had been a youth pastor in the area. So 16 years of Northern Virginia. Never thought Ohio would be our lives. And now we're in our 12th year of being in Ohio, and this is where we're going to be, if the Lord wills, for the rest of our lives. My parents and grandmother here, and my children, grown children, married children, all here. So it's awesome. And so, so we're in that mode of, it's hard to believe it's been 11 years, but that's a good chunk of time.
Yeah.
It's the longest I've been anywhere. And also it's like, I feel like just getting started in a way too. It's hard to believe. Like, I feel like there's so much to do, and there's so much in front of us. So we're super excited.
And for you said it's hard leaving, Virginia, where you were for 16 years, 2 different churches, things like that. And so what about Ohio, right? I mean, obviously it's easy to say, oh, we felt the Lord's calling, and obviously that's a part of it to come to Ohio.
Sure.
But like, what kind of led you to here? How did you find out about Sycamore Creek? What drew you to this church?
I had some connections here. Knew somebody that was on staff here, and it was a couple-year process, because there was it's a long story, but there was a couple different things we looked at. But when we visited here, really liked the church. And I guess in my mind, just more backstories, we were a church plant in Northern Virginia. The property was like outrageous. So we had been looking for land, looking for a building, and couldn't find it. So we were a church of over 200 people every week, meeting in a school with a 26-foot trailer that we had all our equipment in, setting up and tearing down, had no real permanent location, nothing in sight like it was ever going to happen. So that was kind of discouraging. And then I saw Sycamore Creek with all the land. They had a building. It wasn't pretty. It was ugly, but it was a building, and it was very appealing. The style of the church was what I was used to and wanted to be a part of. There's more stability. And the culture of Pickerington and Columbus area had its appeal to us because it was a more less transient. Northern Virginia was every year people are moving, like military, government. Nobody planned on staying there. Everybody's leaving.
Yep.
And so, but here it was like, okay, people do come and go here. I know that, but for me, it was much different, and it was a better place to raise my family, to be for the rest of our lives, because they were starting to get I had that sense that I wasn't going to be there forever, but Ohio really wasn't on my radar. If you would have asked me, 15 years ago, you see yourself in Ohio one day for the rest of your life? Like, Ohio?
Yeah.
I never would have thought about it. I didn't even know. We had a couple families in our church in Virginia that had been in Ohio. And I remember one lady every year, she was an awesome cook. She was in my small group there. And she said, I'm making Buckeye candy. I'm like, what is Buckeye candy? And I remember every year she'd make these candies. I'm like, these chocolate peanut butter candies are awesome. But
so
in
that's
my
what
mind,
drew you here.
It was it. Maybe that was a sign back
Buckeye
then.
candy.
Shout out to Joanne. She was awesome about that. But it's like I never even calculated or did. I remember watching, a national championship football game once that I think they played Florida or something. And it was way back in the Tim Tebow time. I think maybe they did. But I didn't care. Could care less about Ohio State. Now I'm like, all in. But anyway, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So now you're here. So when you came 11 years ago, and let's even say once you became the pastor of Sycamore Creek Church, what were some of the things kind of right off the bat that you wanted to change? What we're going to talk about here in a minute is vision going forward.
Right.
And I think that kind of starts maybe when you came in. What were some things that you saw early on that you were like, all right, we gotta change these things a little bit?
Yeah. Well, that's
ago.
good. When you take over a church, it's already been in existence, I think at that time, about 15 years. There's already things that are established, so you need to be careful and not come in and just step on toes. At the same time, the elders, when they hired me with the church's vote, they said, look, take over, change things that you want to change. We want you to take charge, whatever you want to do. You're going to run it by us, of course, but we want you to be the leader. But also, there's wisdom in going slow at first. But what did I see? First, certain things you're handcuffed by money. So like the building immediately was like, man, we need to update the building, and some of the things that are just cringy, but there was no money to do them. So I say that because I don't want to insult anybody that was here and say, we thought it looked good. No, like you knew it needed changing too, but it was like, we can't do what we can't do without money. So, and also a big thing was, taking a step forward, because the church was established in that whole model of, hey, we want to reach the unchurched. And Sycamore Creek did an awesome job when they started doing that. But it had kind of settled in a little bit. And I wanted to make sure that we were still on the cutting edge of technology and worship. And, we had an awesome group of people that were involved in worship and production, but they didn't have a leader. There was some like part-time people that would lead worship, but there was nobody leading that. And so the first thing I identified was we need a hire full-time staff member that is a worship leader, that was trained to do that can see the big picture. We're sitting in this podcast room, and there's this TV right here. This wall was a screen before, a square screen, which was weird. Like, these are things I see when I walk in. We have in the middle of our stage a rectangular 16:9 screen, right, that people are used to. This is back then. And we have these two square screens on the side. So I come in and watch, and we had these blurry images on the screens on both sides. So I was like, what are we doing? And the color was weird. I was like, we got to step up. We had VCRs that were piled on top of VCRs. And so we needed a leader. And so we started that in my first year, looking to add that first staff member, which was, I think, critical toward getting us moving in the direction, because I don't have music ability. But I know what sounds good, know what looks good. So starting moving that in the right direction, getting more organized in that structure. And then of course, going from there, because I believe staffing is a big part of it, having the right people on your team. And that was another thing the elders were clear about from the beginning, get the people you want, get the people that you think are going to help you build this church. So,
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And, do you feel like where we are now, like you said, you feel like we're just getting started. But do you feel like a lot of those maybe vision things that you had, or those things that you saw early on, are being accomplished and are moving in the direction that you feel like God has kind of put you and placed you here at Sycamore Creek for that reason?
That's a awesome question. I remember after Jared was hired. So Jared came a year after I did, or a little less. It was like 9 months in when we hired Jared. And anyway, it wasn't long after that he and I went out on the back part of the property where it was like cornfields or soybean fields, and there was a disc golf course. And I think maybe with his iPhone videoed me talking about vision. And it's out there somewhere, talking about that this land we're on one day is going to be something different. Whether we sell some of it, whether we build a new worship center back here, God has a plan, because we had 78 acres at the time. Like, what are we going to do with that unless we're going to become the Saddleback Church of Ohio, mega church, which I didn't think that's what God was calling us to do. What are we going to do with this land? So anyway, that part of the vision is pretty awesome to see now, because God just opened the door for somebody to walk in and say, I want to buy a big portion of your land and build housing on it, which was originally the idea when the church acquired the property. So anyway, that helped us with debt. It helped us to build a church office. It led us down this road to renovating the building, which is a big part of my vision when I came. Was like, let's make this thing look like a church that fits in our community. Like, it's not all about stained glass. It's not all about fancy. And we didn't do things to be fancy or to waste money on things that don't matter. But also, we're in Pickerington. It's a very nice community. There's new homes all around us. Yeah. Things look a certain way. And we had this crazy. And we had this ugly metal frame warehouse, but that is not appealing to people. Yeah. It's like, it's contextualizing your church to the community. And like, who cares in certain communities, but in this community, to reach people that are going to live in these houses, it needs to look better and be nicer. So we got ourselves in that position with God opening the door to somebody to buy that land. And then it's a process, and be able to add staff that can help at different times, and to get down the road with a building program, which I'd never led a building program before. And I appreciate all the work Christy did. Barry was instrumental at that time in that process of the campaign and all that. And then Jared had the skills to on the a lot of the hands-on construction side of things. So all that process of seeing that part of the vision come to fruition. Now, the other part of the vision that I also had was like, we would have this, growth, not just in building, but we'd have the growth numerically. And so we keep stats, and numbers matter because numbers represent people. And so we saw steady growth. After my first 2 years, it was kind of like even, and then we saw steady growth, and then kind of leveled out. Then we saw another, and then right before COVID, we were really, things were trending really well. And then it's kind of like, boom, starting back to a couple levels back again. So while that could be frustrating, I again go back to James 4 again. Well, this is our plan, but the Lord's will is what it is. So we can't control all of that. But I'm super excited about where we are now, because I think we're positioned in a great place.
And we've talked about that as a staff too, in staff meetings and things like that, where even though numerically we may be lower than we were before COVID, we feel much healthier as a church as a whole. Would you say that that's true? Like, the people who are here, we feel like there's this health in our church and this like kind of vibrance in the church on Sunday mornings, and the people that are here and connected. And so that's, obviously super encouraging.
It is. It's like people come and go, and I was searching through old pictures the other night on my iPad to try to, from my Google Photos or Facebook Photos, I forget which, but trying to find a picture of something. And I started seeing all these old pictures, and I found one from a marriage retreat that we had like 9 years ago. I think it was 9 or 10. It was one of my first ones. It wasn't my first, but anyway, I was looking at the group of 40 couples standing on this staircase, and I was amazed at how few of them are still part of the church. And they moved, they left for some reason, they were offended by something, their marriage fell apart, different things. And it's like, then you start to be like, wow, what if all these people were still here, but that wasn't meant to be? And I was talking to somebody about this, and how like sometimes God brings people for a season into your church, and maybe they get saved here, maybe they get baptized, maybe they get discipled. And I don't believe in church hopping. I don't think people grow the best when they're always changing churches, but sometimes they're here for a season and they help the church grow and they grow from it, but sometimes God moves them somewhere else for a certain reason. So I've learned to accept that and realize where we are now is where we're supposed to be. I feel that way. Like small groups, I think, are healthier now. I think there was, they weren't as many people in them, but there was a lot of groups that didn't really have much health about them. They weren't really functioning as a healthy small group. It was more just a handful of people that got together and had a good time. But so I think there's a lot more focus. There's a lot more intentionality. And I do think that church health matters a lot more to me than it used to. Like I used to be like, set these big goals, have these big, we're going to have 1,000 people every week by this date, by this year. But if our church is healthy, it's going to grow. And I think growing steady is more important than growing like that. Because like we've said before, if our church doubled next week, we couldn't handle it. Like we, staff-wise, volunteer-wise, in every area, we'd be like overwhelmed. So anyway, I feel like we're now that COVID's over and we're got a larger building, I think we are absolutely positioned in the best place possible for growth, because we're also sitting right in the middle of new housing communities, not just on our property that we had, but all around us. It's constantly building. So we have no reason not to grow now if we're healthy. Yeah.
And you're kind of setting up kind of how I want to end here. When we did the live podcast a few weeks ago, we got multiple questions about what is the long-term vision and what is the future vision for Sycamore Creek Church. And so I thought that'll kind of be the way to kind of wrap up this conversation is just for a couple minutes, just for you to share maybe some things that you feel like you really want to move Sycamore Creek towards in the next year, in the next 5 years, whatever. But just what are some vision, maybe goals for Sycamore Creek as we continue to grow?
Well, a lot of things we could talk about. One thing, outwardly thinking, we want to make sure we continue to do what we've started this year. I think people are starting to notice, but we started in August with a food truck festival that was free for the community. We're giving, that was a big expense, but well worth it. We want to invest in the community. We want to be known for that, giving but not asking for things. We are giving away 100 Thanksgiving boxes this coming weekend to families that are in need in our area. So they'll have a Thanksgiving meal. There's a ministry we support that reaches out to and works with disciples, teenagers that don't have father figures in their lives downtown Columbus. We're bringing them here for a special night during the Christmas season to give them gifts and surprise them. And that's just a taste. We've got some things planned for next year too, but I want us to be thinking about how we can give. And because it's, now we're in this place and it's not just about you come to build our church numbers. It's about giving. And I think I want us to be known for that. So that's part of the vision for the future. Obviously, I've already mentioned church growth is a vision for the future. I love our staff, but I want to grow our staff. Not just all of us growing individually, but we need more people on our staff to grow. So part of my vision is adding staff in the next year, in the next couple years, because that's a big part of it. We need more manpower. It felt very, I know for you and Jared, felt very thin in terms of staff on Sunday because Christy was on vacation. I was sick. And so there's just a lot of depth I'd like to build in that area as well. And I don't want to get crazy with adding 17 more ministries, because I think churches that do that, that's old school thinking. Let's just add as many things as we can. I want to be strategic. I think strategically we added a Sweet Life ministry because we saw a need. There's a lot of people in our church. Our church has been around 27 years now. There's a lot of people that are over 55 and that don't have that fellowship. They can be in a small group, but this is something extra, a Sweet Life ministry
and it's
for
going
them.
Really well.
And it's going really well. But if somebody comes in, I want to have this ministry and that, let's make sure before we just keep adding stuff and putting stuff on the calendar. So, because I want to be focused on the thing that we want to do the best is building the kingdom. I'm super excited about the fact that we've had 40 people baptized this year. That means a lot to me. I think that's a sign of health to have a lot of people getting baptized. We need to grow our church financially so we can do the outreach things that we want to do and add the staff. So it all kind of goes together.
Yeah.
But again, I look forward to seeing that happen. And like, I feel like I came first year getting my bearings and everything, after a couple years, pushing on the gas pedal a little bit, and then getting kind of to that point with the campaign, pushing hard, and then COVID happened, and it was just kind of like, okay. And now I feel like, okay, now it's time, 2023, let's push the pedal of the gas and let's go.
Yep.
Because it's time to go. Everything is set for us to go. So let's do that. So I don't know all that'll look like, but I think one thing that we as a staff do is always are looking and listening to what's happening, what's going on in the world around us. And we want to be aware of that. We want to do all that we can to reach as many people as we can in the shortest amount of time. So there's an urgency about it. And I think we're all excited about that and looking forward to that.
Yeah. Well, I love that. And I think if you kind of have that passion and that drive for this next year, it's going to rub off on the staff and on the church as a whole. So I think it's exciting. And I think, God's going to do some awesome things.
Yeah, do you sense it? Do you sense that we're ready for that?
It feels like it. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like we've just been like there was kind of put in a box for a couple years here. And also it's not only just COVID, it was also the stress of the financial part of it. And God blessed us the whole time, and people kept giving. So that isn't like the biggest strain. I mean, we have a mortgage I would love to see. One of my goals is, I don't want to even think about retiring. I'm 52. One day, some people are like 65, 70. I want to work until everybody around me tells me you're no longer effective. You're slowing things down. I don't want to be in the way. But I also, I want to, one day leave this place in better shape than it's ever been, like no debt. I want to see us get out of the debt. And also the less debt we have, the more we can do. I want to plant churches. I don't know what that looks like, how we'll plant churches, whether it's around here or in other areas, because planting churches is a great way to reach people. New churches reach more people than old churches and dead churches. So there's just a lot of different things that we can do. But we're right here now in Pickerington in a growing community. And God's given us this opportunity. So I think all of us as a staff are excited for that and ready for what's next, and not just like, well, we're going to check our boxes and status quo unless, let's see what happens. It's like, I'm kind of tired of waiting. So, but it's been a season that God has, forced a lot of people to go through. I mean, we're not alone. Everybody's gone through it. And some places have been worse than Ohio. I have friends back in Northern Virginia, and there's been much more restrictive there about COVID stuff, and people some have really suffered more than we have here. So we have a lot to be thankful for.
Yeah.
Excited?
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for that. And thank you for just the vision that you have and the passion you have for our church as a whole. And, a lot of that falls on your shoulders, whether we move or we don't, or we do something or we don't. And so, as a fellow staff member and as one of your employees, just thank you for that.
Thank you.
So I have a special ending here today. I'm actually really excited for this. This is the ending of season 3. And so what I've done is I've reached out to a few people that, listen to the podcast and have been on this journey with us for a while now, and so they've sent in them talking and sharing about what the podcast means to them. And so that's how we're going to end this season. And Jared, let me know. I'm going to try to turn this up as loud as I can so that they actually come through the microphone.
You have audio recordings.
Yep. Okay. And so and then we'll end on that note. So it'll be kind of a special way for us to end. Let's see here.
And the reason that I listen to the podcast is by the middle of the week, all of the wonderful things from the sermon that I've been thinking about and the reminders that God is always with me begin to fade a little bit. So when I turn on the podcast, I'm reminded that God is with us in all things. I learn something new. I always leave with a smile on my face, and I look forward to the next one. I thank you so much for providing this midweek refresher and renewed hope in Christ. Thank you.
That's awesome. Thank you, Carol. One of the things that we said from the beginning is from Sunday to Sunday is a long time. So it's nice by Thursday in the week to have a touch into the church body. So that's awesome.
You got a couple more.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Darren Green. I wanted to briefly discuss how beneficial for me the In All Things podcast has been since I started listening to it last year, shortly before my wife Linda and I became members at Sycamore Creek Church. The In All Things podcast really gets into all things. It's another avenue that our pastoral staff is utilizing to help provide guidance on changing the world through changing lives. Attending church services, participating in a weekly small group, and listening to the podcast has given me an additional way to help me grow closer to God. It pertains to topics regarding Sycamore Creek Church, our community and our world, and really what it means to be a Christian. In addition, it's helped me to get to know our pastors better and more on a personal level through their weekly discussions. The podcast is informative, humorous at times, and it's very easy to relate to. I really look forward to these each week.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. He sent us an email a couple weeks ago. They're always so encouraging with the podcast and everything. And that story is pretty interesting because he started listening before they came here, which is crazy.
Right.
Crazy.
Now, and in the backstory is that your wife was a student teaching with
her,
Linda.
Yep.
And invited her to them, but that was a couple years ago. And then it just sometimes people remember, they start thinking about things and that's really awesome.
So shout out to the Greens.
Yeah,
they're awesome.
love the Greens.
So let's keep going.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Leslie Markle. I really enjoy the podcast from beginning to end, and I always learn something. And I really am not biased at all. These guys are really smart. Thank you.
You know her? Yeah.
I've heard that voice before.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Thanks,
right.
Mom.
Shout out Leslie Markle. All right.
Hey, it's Tim Billingsley. Hey, thank you guys so much for the podcast that you do. For me, I travel quite a bit for work. I'm actually at O'Hare Airport right now. And the podcast helps me stay plugged into the church family and helps me feel like I'm closer to home throughout the course of the week. So I just appreciate the topics you cover, the guests that you have, how you keep it fresh and relevant, and talk about the service from the previous week. It just really helps lift my spirits and keep me close and plugged into the church while I'm far away from home. So thanks for all you do. Keep it up. Appreciate y'all.
That's awesome. Tim is one of our new small group leaders and doing an amazing job, and really appreciate that, Tim.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. He's literally the video. He's standing in an airport. So
yeah,
it's cool.
That is cool.
On the road. So you got two more.
Okay.
All right. Here we go.
Hello, my name is Leah Weigel, and I just want to thank Pastor Mitch and Pastor Steve for this past year with the podcast. I was looking forward to it every week. I would run on the treadmill as I listened to it, and I just looked forward to it a lot. It challenged me and encouraged me. The thing that stuck with me most was constant people don't need to feel close to God to know they are close to God. And I was just every week enlightened and encouraged, and I laughed and I cried and I sweated as I worked out, so it was helpful. Thank you so much, guys. I'm looking forward to next year with great anticipation. Blessings.
That's awesome. Yeah. I would encourage people, keep working out, even during the Thanksgiving, Christmas break.
Yeah.
Even though you can't listen to us.
Just maybe catch up on ones you've missed or something.
Right.
All right, here's our last one.
All right.
Maybe.
Hey, Steve and Mitch, this is Mike, a longtime listener, first-time caller, and I wanted to let you guys know a couple things that I've enjoyed about listening to the podcast. One is I'm definitely informed almost weekly on what it is that you guys are drinking and thinking about for lunch, so I appreciate the relatability there. But secondly, I also want to say I do appreciate your passion about God and the Bible and your desire to be for Him to be known, seen, and followed in all things. So keep up the great work. I'm going to keep on listening.
Hey, thanks, Mike, and thank you for calling. And look forward to our phone number is you can call right now. Listen, I think that it's important to let people know here that on our calendar for this week on Tuesday was Peppermint Milkshake Day at Chick-fil-A because their new one for the season came out, and we didn't go.
We have not gone.
We haven't gone Tuesday because we haven't all been together, and so there's some debate today because you have a lunch date today. So whether Jared and I are going to go anyway, and then get one and bring you one back,
Right.
or what's going to happen. But I think knowing what we drink and eat is really important to people.
Yeah, very important.
Like I have water in here. Do you have water in your cup?
Yeah, usually do.
Yeah, me too. But sometimes we've had Red Bull and coffee I've had. And so, I think those things are very deep spiritual things like Mike's saying. But I think the whole thing is life isn't segmented. And we've talked about this, but it's just being relatable. Yeah, because maybe people have grown up in a church environment where the pastor or the minister or priest has seemed like some distant person. And part of what we do is want people to know that we have the same things going on in our lives. We, eat Chick-fil-A, we throw up, we have sinus infections. We also strive to, live well with our families, our wives, and we're not perfect and we have plenty of flaws, and we've shared a lot of our flaws here with you. You've gotten to see them. But we also want everybody to know that we truly believe Romans 8:28, that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, to those who are called according to his purpose. And we know that some things don't work out the way we want, but God has a plan. I was smiling as Jared closed the service Sunday as I was watching from my bed on YouTube, and he said, there's some reason Steve wasn't here today. He's going to preach the sermon that he was going to preach today, next week. And there's going to be somebody maybe next week that wasn't here today that needed to hear that sermon.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I just think, you know what? Yeah, nothing's by chance. And there was people there last Sunday that needed to hear your sermon more than they heard mine. So, Lord willing, God doesn't do that to me again to make that happen. But whatever God wants to do, he can work in all things that happen in our lives to bring glory to him and to bring people to Jesus and help everybody in their faith. So we just want to encourage people. And I think it's a good time this is Thanksgiving week, and who knows, by the time this is out, it may be Thanksgiving week, but it's a great time to just be thankful.
Yeah.
In my men's group this morning at 6:30, the prayer request time was mostly I'm just thankful. A lot of guys just say, I'm just thankful for this group. I'm thankful for our church. I'm thankful for my family, thankful for my life, because there's so many negative things in this world that we could focus on. But I'm thankful for everybody in our church, for those that listen, for those that ask questions about the vision, that believe in the vision, that want to be a part of our future. So thankful for that. Thankful for you. Thankful for Jared. Thankful for you guys and your commitment. I could have a vision all day long, but if there's nobody that's excited about it, I'm going to be sitting by myself and not in God's will. So you guys bring joy to my life and help me to want to do what I do. So thank you.
Well, I don't think there's a better way to end. And so we're going to end on that note here on 2022, Season 3 of the In All Things podcast. So thank you all to those who sent in videos. I kind of gathered some of those people together this past, really last couple of days.
That's
and so
awesome.
It's cool. But I'm sure there's many more that would have sent things in. But I just quickly went and found people that I knew In All Things meant something to them.
Right.
And so thank you to all of you. But thank you to everybody who watches and listens to this every week. You have a little bit of time now to go back and catch up on the things we've done and places we've gone so far on this podcast. And we're going to be back with Season 4 in January. And we have a lot of exciting things planned.
You do.
So, I don't know if I have anything else.
All right.
I think that's
happy
it.
Thanksgiving and Merry Christmas, because, this will be the last one till then. But we'll see you on this In All Things podcast in January.
Yep. See you later. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the In All Things podcast. Our challenge for you today is to send this episode to one person. Seriously, think of somebody right now that could use this conversation and send it to them. If you have any questions, feedback, or topic ideas, please send them to podcast@sycamorecreek.org, and make sure you follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Sycamore Creek Church so that you can always see what's going on in our world. If this conversation helped you at all, make sure you share it, leave a review, and subscribe so that you don't miss out on a single episode. We love you, God loves you, and we'll see you next week on the In All Things podcast.